Some stories begin with a whisper. Mine started with a storm behind my ribs. I stood in the principal's office, my palms trembling, tears burning behind my eyelids, while two perfectly dressed parents looked at me like I was dirt under their expensive shoes. They didn't even try to hide the smirks. To them, I wasn't a tired mother defending her daughter. I was a failure, a single woman who should have known better than to try raising a child alone, a mistake in heels and a cardigan. They had no idea, absolutely no clue, that with one phone call, I could summon someone who would shatter their smug certainty and make them regret every drop of venom they'd just poured into the air. If you've ever been told you're not enough, that your solitude is a scar, your motherhood a flaw, this story is your armor. Because what's coming next isn't just about pain, it's about power. Smash that like button of your heart, because this story proves what real family looks like when the world turns against you. And trust me, when true love and real protection walk side by side, no bully alive can stand in their way. My name is Hazel. I'm 38 years old. I've spent most of my life building walls so tall that love couldn't climb over them, and pain couldn't break through. I used to think that was strength. Now I see it was fear dressed up in armor. My first teacher was my own father, Christopher, the man who showed me how easily love could vanish. I was 13 when I found my mother, Clara, collapsed at the kitchen table, shaking as she held open proof of his affair. He hadn't just betrayed us. He'd replaced us. Disappeared without warning into a brighter, younger life, leaving behind a stack of unpaid bills and a daughter who learned her first cruel lesson early. A man's love has an expiration date. Mom worked herself raw just to keep us afloat. 3 jobs, cheap dinners, clothes that already knew another owner's name. I learned not to hope for rescue. I learned how silence can sound like dignity when all you have left is pride. 3 years later, she remarried. His name was William. I was 16, furious, and suspicious of every smile he gave us. William wasn't anything like my father. He was calm, stable, successful. He owned half the real estate downtown, which terrified me. Power, I'd learned, always came with a catch. So I froze him out. Didn't call him dad. Didn't take his money. Didn't trust the steady kindness he offered. When he offered to pay for my college, I chose debt instead, because I refused to let another man think he owned a piece of me. The day I turned 18, I packed my bags, ignored his goodbye, and walked out for good. Years passed. I waited tables, poured coffee, juggled double shifts while paying for those stubborn student loans. That's where I met Michael, 25, dreamer type, a graphic designer chasing his big break. I was 23 and exhausted. He noticed me. That was all it took. After years of trying to be unbreakable, I met someone who made me laugh over spilled espresso and late-night bus rides. He called me beautiful when I still smelled like coffee grounds. He made life feel lighter. 6 months later, we were living together. 2 years after that, I was pregnant. And for the first time, I thought maybe miracles still existed for women like me. At first, Michael was thrilled. Bought baby books. Talked about apartments with room for a nursery. But hope can be a liar. As my belly grew, his interest faded. Nights out became longer, his texts shorter. Excuses piled up like dirty laundry. By the 7th month, I found the messages, flirty texts that turned my stomach cold. When I confronted him, he didn't even apologize. Said I'd changed. Said pregnancy made me dull. Said he needed space. He left with a half-empty suitcase and a full sense of self-pity. 6 weeks later, Martha came into the world. He wasn't there. Never called. Never sent a dime. It was as if we'd been erased, deleted from his life entirely. That was lesson number 2. Every man eventually leaves. It isn't a question of if, just when. I kept that truth locked deep inside for years. William kept trying to reach through the walls I'd built. Birthday calls, little checks, messages through Mom that I ignored. I thought I was winning by shutting him out. I thought independence meant isolation. Then came the day the world decided to test everything I believed. My daughter, Martha, 10 years old, shy, artistic, sunshine wrapped in curiosity, started coming home with tear-streaked cheeks. At first it was whispers, giggles, the kind of quiet cruelty kids have learned from watching grown-ups. But soon, it turned darker. Amanda Denton, a classmate with parents who thought their money equaled morality, turned torment into a game. For weeks, she followed my daughter with words sharp as knives. "You don't have a daddy because your mommy's a bad woman. That's why he left." "Nobody wants you." Martha tried to ignore it, tried to be brave, but even the toughest hearts have limits. When Amanda destroyed my daughter's art project, a butterfly sculpture Martha had spent weeks perfecting, and sneered, "Fatherless girls don't deserve to win anything," something inside my daughter broke. She pushed Amanda, hard. Amanda fell, scraped her knee, and ran crying home. And that's all it took. The very next morning, my phone rang. "Ms. Hazel?" Principal Harrison's voice was clipped. "We need to speak immediately about an incident involving your daughter." When I arrived, the air in his office was thick enough to choke on. There was Principal Harrison, looking deeply uncomfortable behind his desk, and beside him sat Andrew and Amber Denton, dressed like they were court-bound, not discussing grade school drama. Andrew crossed one leg over the other, the sort of man who'd introduce himself as a lawyer before saying hello. Amber's perfume was so strong it made the room sting. She smiled, sharp and cold. "Ms. Hazel, thanks for coming," Harrison began. We have a serious matter to discuss." I started calmly. I explained everything. The weeks of taunts, the emotional bruises, the texts Martha had sent me begging not to return to school. I held up my phone to show them proof. That's when Amber's voice sliced through mine like a blade. "Enough," she said crisply. "Your daughter attacked mine." "Pushed her to the ground. That's violence." I blinked, stunned. She was defending herself after months of... Amber leaned forward, eyes glittering. "Children without structure act out, Ms. Hazel. It's sad, really. No father figure, just you, clearly overwhelmed. Some women simply aren't built to raise children alone." Her words hit harder than fists. I felt my stomach twist, my pulse roaring in my ears. Andrew slid a neatly typed paper across the desk. "We're prepared to keep this out of the police system if you sign this," he said smoothly. I looked down. It wasn't just an apology. It was a confession. A statement admitting that I had failed as a mother, that my unstable home caused Martha's aggression, that I accepted full responsibility for poor parenting. "You want me to say I'm a bad mother?" I whispered, hardly hearing my own voice. Amber tilted her head with mock sympathy. "We'd like you to take accountability," she said. "Maybe consider a parenting class, or a father figure program. Every child needs a man around. That's just biology." Even Principal Harrison looked uneasy, but he cleared his throat and said, "Ms. Hazel, until you sign and demonstrate remorse, Martha will remain suspended. We cannot allow violent students back without consequences." I sat there frozen, humiliated, gutted. They weren't just punishing Martha. They were punishing me for every choice I'd ever made, for getting pregnant, for being abandoned, for surviving alone. They were saying the cruelty I endured was my fault. And now my daughter was paying the price. I left that office in a daze. I didn't sign anything. I just walked out, got in my car, and sat in the parking lot shaking. When I got home, Martha was waiting. Her face was swollen from crying. She looked up at me with those big wounded eyes and asked the question that destroyed me. "Mommy, why doesn't my daddy protect me?" I had no answer. "Am I suspended because Amanda is right? Because you're a bad woman?" That was the moment. The moment every wall I'd built crumbled. I realized I was failing my daughter. Not because I was single. Not because I was inadequate. But because I was too proud, too scared, too damaged to ask for help from the one man who'd been offering it for 20 years. Martha needed a protector. She needed proof that Amanda's words were lies. She needed a man to stand up and show her that loyalty, protection, and love still existed. I walked into the kitchen, hands trembling, and pulled out my phone. It scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in 2 decades. William, my stepfather. I pressed the call before I could talk myself out of it. He answered on the second ring. "Hazel." His voice was older, but still steady, calm, like he'd been waiting for this call my entire life. I couldn't speak at first. My throat closed up, but then it all came pouring out. The bullying, the suspension, the letter, the way they'd publicly humiliated me, called me inadequate, a bad woman who deserved to be abandoned. There was a long silence. Then William's voice came back, but it wasn't warm anymore. It was ice, pure controlled fury. Hazel listened to Mevry carefully. He said, "You are my daughter. Martha is my granddaughter. Those people have made a profound miscalculation. You have not failed her. They have failed both of you. William, do not sign anything. Do not speak to anyone. I will handle this. I don't want your money." "This isn't about money," he interrupted, his voice softening slightly. "This is about family. And you've been my family since the day I married your mother. I'm sorry I let you push me away for so long. But I'm not letting you face this alone. Not anymore." He told me to meet him at the school the next morning, 9 a.m. sharp. He'd be there. I hung up, staring at the phone, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. What had I just done? Would he actually show up? Or was this going to be one more disappointment? One more man who promised and failed? That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying every moment, every cruel word, every look of smug superiority on the Dentons' faces. But at 8:55 a.m., standing outside Principal Harrison's office, I saw a sleek black car pull up. The door opened, and William stepped out. He looked exactly like what he was, a man with power, money, and zero tolerance for injustice. He walked over to me, placed a firm, reassuring hand on my shoulder, and gave me a single nod. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel alone. We walked into that office together. The Dentons were already there, looking smug. Principal Harrison sat behind his desk, clearly ready to wrap this up quickly and force me to sign. But then William spoke. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison." The principal looked up and his face went white. He recognized William instantly. Everyone in this city knew who William was. He funded half the district programs. He sat on the school board's advisory committee. He was untouchable. Mr. William Harrison stammered, standing up. "I didn't realize you were Hazel's stepfather," William said calmly, sitting down across from the Dentons. "And Martha's grandfather. I understand there's been some confusion about accountability here." Amber Denton, still arrogant, smiled tightly. "We're simply asking for an apology for Martha's violent behavior, sir. Surely you understand the need for discipline." William looked at her with the kind of calm that precedes devastation. "Mrs. Denton, let me clarify something. Your daughter has spent weeks psychologically tormenting my granddaughter, using deeply personal and cruel insults about her family. When your daughter destroyed Martha's property and mocked her for being fatherless, Martha defended herself. That is not violence. That is self-preservation." Andrew Denton leaned forward. "With all due respect, Mr. William, Martha pushed our daughter and your daughter." William interrupted, his voice like steel. "Has been bullying mine repeatedly, viciously, and you two have been complicit, spreading malicious gossip about my daughter's character, calling her inadequate, a bad woman. That, Mr. Denton, is defamation, and I don't tolerate it." The room went silent. William turned to Principal Harrison. "Here's what's going to happen. You will reinstate Martha immediately with a formal apology from the school. The Dentons will issue a written apology to both Hazel and Martha, and their daughter will be required to attend a bullying intervention program. If any of this is refused, I will take this matter to the school board, the local media, and my personal attorneys. Your choice." Principal Harrison looked like he might faint. "Mr. William, I'm sure we can resolve this, then resolve it now." The Dentons' faces went from smug to panicked. Andrew tried to bluster, but William silenced him with a look. 20 minutes later, I walked out of that office with a formal apology letter. Martha's reinstatement and the knowledge that the Dentons had been utterly destroyed. William didn't gloat. He just squeezed my shoulder and said, "You're a great mother. Hazel, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Walking out into the sunlight that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Protected, valued, loved. William didn't just win a fight. He gave me back my dignity. He proved that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when the world tries to break you. Martha got her life back. And I got my father. If you think William is the definition of a real father, smash that like button. If this story gave you chills, drop a comment telling me what you would have done and subscribe. Because every week we bring you stories where justice isn't just served, it's delivered with precision. See you in the next one.